So we've got the Cloud Surfer out. I transport that as a fuselage with its T-tail, and then the wings and motor pod in the box. Now I've modified it firstly to have a long battery tray which runs all the way to the back of the compartment to allow a lot of balancing range. I cut the motor pod off the top so that I have access to place things inside under the wing. Some plywood plates with captive nuts to allow wing bolts to hold the wing on. So I'll get the wing pieces out and we'll have a look at that in a second. We'll return in a second. With the wings, instead of just pushed together as they come stock, I've put in some plywood plates with captive nuts on both sides, and I'm using an alloy plate which you then bolt down the two wings together. This allows also, there's captive nuts down the center which allow bolting the motor pod back on top afterwards. So we'll put this together, then we'll have a look at the motor pod. So now we've got the motor pod installed. You would have noticed on the alloy plate which is underneath, I had 3 captive nuts. There's one 4mm bolt goes down through the rear. There's 2 3mm bolts. I don't actually use the center one because it's so strong just with the front and rear bolt. That way I don't have to lift the ESC. The ESC is actually just velcroed down. The ESC would normally sit inside the canopy, so I've just modified it to sit up in the airflow on top. There's a ton of room inside, so at the moment there's 2 3000 milliamp 3-cell batteries in parallel, so that's 6000 milliamp. Bit of telemetry sensor. There's also a variometer up under the wing next to the receiver, so for altitude information. Flaps are set up for sort of, well, takeoff flaps, which you don't really need to use anyway, but also for gliding. That's a pretty good angle for optimizing your gliding. I haven't fine-tuned that yet. Full flaps for landing. They're quite extreme. It really slows down well. At the moment I'm using an 80mm center of gravity. They say 90 for the balance point. 90 is a long way back on the wing, beyond 30% of the chord. But having flown it at 80, and you might see there's a little bit of up trim required. So basically the wing incidences and tailplane incidents they've set up means if you used 80mm, you need some up elevator trim. Actually, it's interesting now that I look at it because the left side is almost flush. So actually it may have no up trim at all, and it's just there's a problem in the elevator that it's not, it's warped. So I'll have the tailplane, I mean, at the corner. So I'll have a look at that. So maybe it is actually neutral trim. I'll investigate that further, but it flies very nicely at 80. It quite possibly could use 85 to 90 for gliding purposes, so I haven't got around to trying that. But anyway, we'll get it all up in the air and have a fly around with it.